Howdy, friends and neighbors. This is your old buddy Mark Rudin with another edition of Bloviations, Tall Tales, and Stories from the Road. Some of it true, and hopefully all of it entertaining. Today we're going to tell the story of Santiago Jimenez. Last week, if you go back and look, we talked about how I came to know him and how I was introduced to him by my friend Steve James, and then how out of the blue, without so much as an introduction, he asked me to come down to San Antonio and record a record with him, which was quite an experience, and I will relate it to you now. Got up very early in the morning so I could drive down from Austin to San Antonio. Came down to his record store, Chief Records, and in the back he had set up his studio. His studio was a 4-track half-inch tape reel-to-reel machine. And then normally when he made his records, he played all the instruments, or he would get his working band or whoever he worked with normally to come in and cut live if he could, or come back. He had a lot of control over those records, so he would oftentimes he'd go back and lay down the bass, or he'd come back and lay down the second vocals. It was a sight to behold. But I guess the point I wanted to make is that it was a real slapdash operation. It was all one take. So I want to reiterate that I did not know very much about Tex-Mex conjunto music, that I had just recently learned it. In fact, I used that improper term. I had seen some records put out by Rounder Records, and they called it Tex-Mex Conjunto Records. And as it turns out, conjunto is just Spanish for the word group. And there were all these radio DJs calling it conjunto music, which was kind of silly, because I asked him point blank, what do you call your music? And he said, we call it Tex-Mex because it's a mixture of our Mexican heritage, but we're Texans, so it's Tex-Mex. So from here on out, and I would recommend you do the same when you're referring to the music from American people who live in Texas, who came up with this music, who are of Mexican heritage. We call it Tex-Mex or Tejano music. Those are the terms that they like to use. I digress. So I'm in the studio with him, and he has this bajo sexto player. That's the rhythm instrument that came up from the northern part of Mexico. It looks like a 12-string guitar, but it's tuned just a little bit differently. It's tuned all in fourths, much like a bass. So bajo, bass, sexto, six courses doubled, bajo sexto. So it's the rhythm instrument. And there was this really wonderful guy named Jesse Castillo, who we'll talk about later, and didn't say a word. Very interesting man. Sat there, a pencil thin mustache, big kind of a burly guy who was very, very small. And he stood there, and he was going to play, and then I walked in, and with my string bass, and we put just a microphone on there, and then he just said, okay, and then he just rolled tape. And I don't know anything about this music or these tunes or these songs. He just went, and then he goes, this is a polka, key of C. And then I just kind of intuited this music. I just kind of blared through it, and faked my way through the changes. And if I made a really bad deal, he would stop. But as it turned out, we just did, 10 tunes. And what was interesting is that he had his last recording. He only did cassette recordings because his audience all had cars with cassettes and cassette players at home. So they hadn't quite made the transition to CD yet. So he was only making recordings for his own community, and they bought cassettes, and they paid only $5 for them. That was the deal. So he had to keep his expenses really low. So he had his last cassette with him, and he was looking at it going, floor to floor. I recorded that as a waltz last time. Okay, let's do it as a polka. And he would just essentially take the same tune, same melody, but then he would just perform it as a polka. He was completely capable of taking any song and performing it as a polka, a waltz, a cumbia, anything. And I came to find that was entirely within the tradition, that any one of these melodies or tunes could be completely melded to do what the musician or the dance required. It was quite the education. So we banged out these tunes, and I'm sitting there. By the way, I should also let the audience know I don't speak Spanish, and I certainly didn't understand a whole lot of Spanish at the time. So I'm completely in the dark. So we do the 10 tunes, and he pulls out $100. So it's $10 a tune. And then we go over there to Torres Taco Heaven, and he buys me a plate of tacos, and we chat a little bit, and that's when I kind of got to know him. And then he just kind of asked me, look, I've got a dance. I do a regular monthly dance at the Royal Palace Ballroom over on Southwest Military, over on the southwest side of town, and would you be interested in coming out and playing? They really love the sound of the old tololoche, the old string bass that Juan Viesca used to play, and I'm sure they would really be interested in seeing you, and they'd be really charmed. So would you like to come out and play that dance? It pays pretty good. It's a couple $100. And I will give you the concession for the sales. I didn't know what that meant, but I said, what the heck, yeah. So bear in mind, my band Bad Livers was doing pretty good at this time, and we were playing a lot, but we weren't working on Sundays. So this was a Sunday dance. So Santiago just said, meet me down at my place. And so the appointed Sunday came along. I drove down, I met him at his place, and what I came to find is that if you were the band leader in the Tejano Tex-Mex world, you were responsible for everything. So Santiago shows up at the hall, and I helped him load his gear in. He had to show up with a PA system, with a drum kit, with a bass amp, a guitar amp, and in this case, a clean shirt for the bajo sexto player, because the guy that he hired evidently showed up looking pretty ratty on a normal occasion, and Santiago didn't want to have that happen. I should also mention that he told me after our recording session that he recommended that I go to this one particular store to get my stage clothes. And I recommend that you go to this store too. It's called Penners, and it's in San Antonio. It is a Jewish family-owned business. It's been around since 1919. The Penner family is still there. He told me I should get my guayaberas there, and that I should get my tangerines. Now, what's a tangerine, you ask? A tangerine is a particular color shoe that you can get there. The Penners actually have them made in Mexico. There's another, Stacy Adams is the company that made them originally. But now the Penners have them made in Mexico, and they're much nicer. So when you go to the Penners store there, tell them Mark Rubin, the fat Jew from Austin, sent you. Great collection of guayaberas, and every time I'm in San Antonio, I go there. Family-owned business, Jewish-owned business, say howdy. But that's where I went to get my guayabera and my pen and to get my tangerines so that I looked proper on stage. So I'm helping him set up all this gear, and then I bring my string bass in, and I noticed that people are pouring in. People are pouring in. This is a huge dance hall. People are pouring into this place. There's like, I'm not making this up, there's like 400 couples coming into this place, and it's still filling up. And in the back corner there's like a kitchen set up, and you could just smell the grease. It was amazing. And what I realized was when I went outside is that a lot of the retirement communities were bringing their buses in. And so, yeah, it was really an old folks dance. I think the median age there was about, I don't know, 71, 72. It was something else. And, well, I guess I'll leave it there. So we'll come back to the Royal Palace Ballroom when we talk about more Bloviations, Tall Tales, and Stories from the Road, when we continue about my saga as the bassist, the tololocheista, with Santiago Jimenez. We'll tell you about the Royal Palace Ballroom, playing a quinceañera, and our first trip overseas after Santiago swore he'd never get on a plane again. That's next time. So hey, by the way, would you think about supporting my efforts here? We've got a Patreon account and we've got a Venmo account and PayPal. And, in these troubled times, this is the only income that I can look forward to. So think about helping you out, your old buddy Mark, and we'll see you next time.